Hello and welcome to this episode on regulatory jurisdiction in connection with the Companies Act 2013. We have the privilege of the company of Senior Counsel Shiraz Rustamji and Mr. S.D. Israni, who is not only a lawyer but also a company secretary. In this episode, we're going to talk about the scope of jurisdiction of various agencies under the Act. And Shiraz, may I start by asking you, could you give us an overview of which are the various authorities designated under the Act for administering and or enforcing various provisions of the Act?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing that the Act does is that it tries to kind of harmonize the role played by various agencies, which has been until now a little disparate. So you have a situation where there are multiple agencies playing multiple roles. At a very basic level, I think you have your fundamental filings and so on, which are to be done with the Office of the Registrar, both under the old Act and the new. And I think the Registrar maintains that control and maintains his jurisdiction over that aspect of it. There are various matters which the Registrar is supposed to take up and which lie within his domain. There are matters of shareholder grievances, substantive issues of law, the oppression and mismanagement jurisdiction, the winding up jurisdiction, which go to the NCLT, the tribunal,
Right.
which has above it an appellate level tribunal. And from that appellate level tribunal, an appeal to the Supreme Court.
As a statutory right to appeal.
As a statutory right to appeal, but on a question of law. So a lot of the individual shareholder grievances and the disputes between perhaps groups, etc., would go there. Then you have SEBI's role, which is fundamentally concerned with the issue transfer of securities, which is kind of broadly delineated in Section 24, which says that for the purposes of chapters 3, 4, and one other section, which is essentially dealing, I think, with dividend, SEBI will have the right to administer the sections that relate to the issue and transfer of security
and dividend.
And dividend. The rest of it makes very clear, is to be either administered by the MCA or the tribunal or the registrar, I think, as the case may be, depending on. So that, I think those responsibilities are fairly well carved out. At the criminal level, I think one important feature which has been introduced now is the concept of the SFIO and the boosting of the SFIO's powers, in the sense that it is given primacy as an investigative agency. And I think one interesting thing which I don't think was there earlier or had a precedent is that once the SFIO initiates an investigation, the section categorically provides that no other central investigative agency must then look into it.
Right, because it could hamper or hinder
I think the idea
ease of SFIO's access.
Yeah, I think the idea is avoid multiplicity,
right.
Avoid having a situation where you have 4 or 5 agencies getting in each other's way, arriving at
the
sort
same
of contradictory,
right.
not sharing evidence properly, all that kind of stuff. So that's interesting, because that means you are now going to have one investigative agency, and the safeguard that is provided seems to be that by statute it must share information with the other agencies that would need it.
Right.
So if it comes across, I suppose, an income tax issue or a SEBI related issue or whatever, it should pass it on.
Right.
But the investigation is now being done by one unified agency. The agency reports to government. The agency also has independent powers of arrest, etc., and initiation of that whole judicial process. It can be activated, as far as I can see, either by government or, interestingly, by resolution of shareholders in a case where the company itself wants it, or in the public interest, which again is an interesting thing, because that means you effectively have, I think, a suo motu power.
That's right.
For the agency to actually act. Then you have a system of criminal courts. There's provision for special courts. I don't think they've been constituted yet. And I think the Act provides that the existing sessions courts are to continue.
That's right.
As special courts until they are actually established. So broadly speaking, that's the way responsibilities are divided.
Right.
I suppose there are some areas of, minor overlap.
Right.
But in any case, regulations are supposed to be framed and rules are supposed to be framed covering these various things.
Right.
And one assumes that will kind of iron out the creases.
Right. Right. So, Iswani, would you like to supplement some of these and also speak a bit about the adjudicating role played by some authorities constituted under the Act?
Yeah, no, let me start at the beginning. Under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, there is the regional director for each region and below them there is a registrar of companies in each state. Now, registrar of companies is basically the filing authority where all the documents are to be filed, returns are to be filed. And as on date, there is no system of appeal available against orders passed by the registrar. But for the first time, we find there is an appellate authority and the regional director is designated as the appellate authority. So the appeal against the ROC's order or the regional registrar of companies order can be filed with the regional director. The second part of it is that I personally believe that law has tried to address that there is a clarity so far as the powers of SEBI are concerned and powers of regional director and the ROC are concerned, although at times slight overlap may seem to be there. But when it comes to unlisted companies, it's very clear that Ministry of Corporate Affairs through the registrar and regional director has the final power. SEBI does not come into play. SEBI comes into play only in case of listed companies, and as one place it is mentioned when it intends to list, when it is in the process of getting listed.
Right.
Then SEBI comes into play. So, and for the first time under the Companies Act, this adjudication process is sought to be introduced, which is not there in the earlier law. There, the intention is to expedite the entire process. Because the experience indicates in the past also when the registrar has tried to file proceedings, initiate proceedings in the criminal courts, it has gone on for years and yielded no result. By adjudication process, perhaps they intend to expedite, and I think they have taken a leaf out of SEBI's regulations and SEBI's procedures for adjudicating, and they hope that they will be able to expedite the whole process. So the intent is good. We'll have to wait and see how it actually turns out in practice.
Right. So therefore, would it be fair to say this, that when it comes to unlisted companies, be they public or private, the only authority would be the authorities under the Act and administered by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs?
I think broadly one can definitely...
Registrar and the RD and that whole chain of command.
Right.
But when it comes to listed companies or companies which make public offers using a prospectus, and we now know that both an offer for sale and an issue are all public offers, the role of SEBI enters the arena. And then there is some degree of, for want of a better word, some areas of ambiguity, but a broad indicative direction that SEBI is the intended authority to administer matters relating to issue or transfer of securities, matters of dividend, and I think there's another one aspect, right, about the remedial measures under the SEBI Act are not overridden by these provisions. So SEBI could also pass orders under 11B, 11D, cease and desist orders of the SEBI Act in this arena. Is that a fair summary to make?
I think that would be a fair summary, and if I were to give a little analogy about the SEBI's additional power, clause 49, independent director, corporate governance independent director, there was no such concept under the Companies Act. It's only in the Companies Act 2013 the creature called independent director has been for the first time defined.
Right.
So at that time SEBI had said whatever is applicable to you under Companies Act is fine, that is the basic. This is additional applicable to listed companies. So if you want to be listed, you have to comply with SEBI regulations, and therefore SEBI has those additional powers, and listed companies are required to adhere to those regulations as well as such.
Right. So let's stay with that last theme a bit. So if there is a violation of the clause 49 of the listing agreement provision, SEBI could still proceed under the SCRA, under which the listing agreement is made.
Right.
If it's also a violation of the Companies Act,
Right.
then there would be a violation of the Companies Act,
Yes.
and the authorities under the Companies Act could act for the violation of the Companies
Yes.
Act.
Well, that itself will be a separate independent default
Right.
for which they will be accountable to the registrar or the regional director, whoever is the authority there as such.
Right.
And the other case, it will be the SEBI.
Right. And as we know, in January, SEBI published a consultative paper on rewriting the corporate governance norms under the securities regulation. So there's scope to harmonize
Right.
everything and make it clear. Can we dwell on the criminal?
Just one thing to add to that. I suppose the challenge will be in the harmonizing.
Right.
Because, for instance, if you already have existing regulations covering the field of, say, issue of securities, and you are now going to frame regulations under the Companies Act, because the section says you shall frame regulations, whether you will simply adopt those or whether you will modify them from a Companies Act perspective, which may be slightly different compared to a plain and simple regulator, securities market regulator, there may be areas of difference. In which case, how are you going to harmonize those two? So I think a lot of the devil will lie in the details in the regulations.
Right. And I suppose increasingly Indian authorities are moving towards public consultation before subordinate legislation. Even the draft rules are out for public consultation. So I suppose it gives society a chance to react and
That's a good thing
point
which has
out
happened
the
in the last few
problems.
years.
Yeah.
And if I remember rightly, it was the SEBI which had started this
That's correct.
practice of putting it on site and inviting public suggestions.
Yeah.
So that it gives the opportunity to professionals like us or the chambers of commerce or others to come forward and give their suggestions. So I think instead of enforcing first and then trying to rectify, it's better to rectify first and come up with a better
right.
suggestion.
Can we also look at the jurisdiction of the criminal court? How does the criminal process for purpose of the Companies Act get set in motion? Like, which is the authority that can set that process in motion? If you could talk a bit around that aspect, it would be useful.
I think if the registrar is the primary authority which is there, a shareholder can file a complaint or an authorized officer of SEBI also can file a complaint with the criminal court for initiating action. Now, there was a time when only the registrar was the authority or a shareholder. SEBI came into picture much later. But today, particularly in the context of listed companies, there is greater responsibility on SEBI to be more conscious about the duties of the companies that they are enforcing properly, or else then SEBI comes into picture and files a complaint.
Yeah, just taking off where he left off, I think there are a large number of offences provided under the statute. I mean, practically every chapter has
A lot of criminal
a lot
sanction.
a lot of criminal sanction, and to a large extent, who is entitled to then set the criminal system in motion depends on which one of those sections is attracted. And I think the provision actually is that if it relates to, for instance, take SEBI's area of coverage, issue, transfer of securities, etc. I think it categorically provides that the court will only take cognizance if it is triggered by an authorized person authorized by SEBI. Similarly, MCA, etc.
Right.
Whereas on the other hand, there may be some sections where that may not be called for,
Right.
where you actually want it to be capable of being triggered by maybe an aggrieved shareholder.
Right. So there is one of the provisos here which talks about almost clarificatory but seemingly creates a substantive right to say that although the provisions above specify who may set it in motion, it says nothing in that will affect an action by a company against its employees. Does it suggest to you that a private citizen complaint, a private complaint for example, violation of insider trading provision in the Act can be initiated, say, by an employer against an employee using the Companies Act?
Possibly.
That could be a fallout of that provision.
Possibly. I don't know whether the bar against taking cognizance, is it in the same section?
It's in the same
Possibly it
section.
is.
Since it's a proviso,
It is in the proviso.
it
Then
suggests that
possibly
there's a
the
new
idea is not to take it completely out of the purview of somebody being able to make that kind of complaint.
Right,
Yes, possibly.
right. Can we talk a little more about how to reconcile the roles of SEBI and the MCA, particularly in the context of two provisions? One speaks about what is called forward dealing in this act, but the way it's defined, it suggests what's intended is front running to be covered, and the other is insider trading. And how would this play out in reality? Because as you know, practicing company secretaries are actually authorized to appear in the Securities Appellate Tribunal and in the various tribunals under this act. So it would be of some use to them to appreciate that aspect of the jurisdictional allocation.
Well, as you know, SEBI already has detailed provisions on, certainly on insider trading. Front running is a grayer area, but there are provisions.
That's right.
And there's already a body of case law on
Front running as well.
what would fall foul and what would not. And it's probably one of the fastest developing. These two areas are
Right.
probably an area where if you're looking at how much new regulatory action is being taken, it's one of the
Right.
the
Intense
largest,
areas of
yeah.
activity.
The Act provides again that those sections are to be in the end administered by SEBI, because it provides that the central government will delegate the power to deal with those
Right.
sections
Shall delegate.
exclusively
Right.
to SEBI. So I would say that broadly speaking, again, I'm not sure whether regulations will now be framed under these two sections, which will in any way deviate from the provisions that are already there. But I think, broadly speaking, it would be safe to say that what is put in here is not really whittling down the scope of what is already in the SEBI regulations. So I don't think that this in any way truncates SEBI's right to take action under, for instance, the prevention of insider trading regulations. The danger, I think, would be if they are defined somewhat differently, or if they're not given exactly the same kind of meaning under these two statutes, then there is scope for confusion. Because a party will not be clear, whether he's safe under one, whether he's falling foul of the other, whether he will be exposed to an action under this act, even if he is not under that.
Right.
So I think that, because it's really, the sections as far as I can see as of now, are cast in fairly wide terms.
Right.
And they don't have the same degree of
Precision.
that SEBI has introduced under the regulations, and those are fairly wide.
Right.
It's not as if those are perfectly fine-tuned either.
Right.
But I think one thing is clear, that the intent perhaps being that under the Companies Act also they wanted to introduce this concept of insider trading as well as forward trading, but the substantive power would remain with SEBI.
That's right.
By virtue of delegation also, and in any case, SEBI is already in the thick of it, and it would be concerning listed companies in any case.
Right.
So I personally believe, the registrar may not be very active in this area, because he will be the complaining authority otherwise. It would be the SEBI which would be active in that.
Right.
So chances of clash, I don't see too many
Right.
happening as such
And
at the operational level.
And I suppose another mitigating argument would be that even if there is a conflict between a general law and a special law, the provisions of the special law
always prevails.
would prevail. And there are some judgments which even suggest that a special law, even if in subordinate legislation, would have to hold the field when it comes to an earlier general law, though it may be parliament made. So
Right.
I think some case law will develop, and if we
Well, I don't know if that really would be applicable, because that is a situation where you have a direct conflict between statutes.
right,
And you would hope for a situation where your statute has now been framed, it's a new law.
right,
Having looked at all this and attempting to bring it under one roof, harmonize it, etc. So one would hope that you're not driven to that kind of argument, that one prevails over the other. It would be a far better situation if you can say, yes, this
harmoniously
fits.
construe.
This is where one stops, this is where the other begins.
Right.
And neither really is stepping on the other's toes.
Right. So, for example, when insider trading in the Companies Act says that it's trading by a person who's reasonably expected to have access, one would have to harmoniously read it
You would
with
expect
the
it-
SEBI regulations to say that means
Yeah.
trading when in possession of unpublished price sensitive
Yeah.
information.
And one would also expect, I think, at some point, some kind of regulations to be framed, which would, I mean, whether they adopt the SEBI regulations
Right.
or whether they align it with those, it's obvious that they have to be along the same lines. Otherwise, it really doesn't make much sense.
Can we, sorry, you had something to add? Yeah. Now, can we move on to another area? I mean, this is an area where both of you do practice quite a bit. This whole arena of the Company Law Board and the NCLT, NCLAT, can you throw some light broadly on what's held up reform in this space for the last, say, a decade and a half, and what departure or what new measure this act makes in that space?
See, when this originally started, Company Law Board was primarily kind of an extension of the government. It was more like an executive wing. The joint secretary used to be the member of the bench. Secretary used to be the chairman of the Company Law Board.
Right.
One half day he would sit in his office as the secretary. Next half day he would be sitting as a member or as the chairman respectively. It was only in 1988 for the first time when it became kind of an independent body that we had an independent chairman and a vice chairman as well as members of this body who were not the officers or the secretaries of the government of India. So for the first time we had kind of independent body, and then certain powers, particularly under 397, 398, operation mismanagement were taken away from the High Court and granted to the Company Law Board. Based on that experience, I think going further now, the government has come to the conclusion where they are coming with the National Company Law Tribunal and National Company Law Appellate Tribunal to be created, so there with greater powers, and therefore a lot of powers from the High Court are going to shift, particularly in respect of mergers and amalgamations, winding up, as well as powers in respect of Sikh industries from BIFR also will be coming to the tribunal, and there will be the appeal against the appellate tribunal will be there, and finally, of course, the statutory appeal to the Supreme Court. So I think this is going to do two things. One, it will speed up and simplify the things, and secondly, it will open up avenue for many professionals also to come and test their skills as well, if I may put it that way.
Right. Shiraz, I have a sort of a constitutional law question for you. In 2001, a similar measure was attempted even under the 56 Act, and the board was to be replaced by a tribunal. That amendment got stayed, and eventually a constitutional bench sort of ruled, not a constitutional bench, a three-member bench, I think, ruled that that provision is not in consonance with the Constitution, in that there was no standard of a judicial member of the tribunal that was prescribed under that law. Now that Parliament has passed this law after that judgment, can we say that having taken note of that judgment of the Supreme Court, Parliament has now passed a law, similar space, similar field, therefore now again the will of Parliament is afresh iterated, and unless this is separately challenged or stayed or set aside, this is good law?
I would say so.
And you wouldn't say that this is conflicting with a judgment of the Supreme
I
Court?
would say it's okay. The other fact, of course, is that the Supreme Court itself, there is no, it hasn't been completely consistent on that, because I think recently in the context of the Central Information Commission,
Right.
the same issue of whether it has to be a judicial person,
member or
etc.,
not.
and they now in review say that it doesn't.
Right.
So whether that line will even continue
Right.
is not clear. I think really the interesting thing is the attempt at unification.
Right.
The attempt to say that there are too many
Forums.
different elements of this being handled by too many different parties. And the attempt to, I mean, clearly that would be a productive direction to move in. If you have a multitude of agencies chipping away at different aspects of it, it's not the greatest situation. So, and BIFR again is a fairly,
Right.
that's a fairly bold kind of move to make.
Right.
So you now will have one agency looking at aspects of restructuring, looking at aspects of winding up. The winding up jurisdiction is large.
Right.
I mean, it's a substantial chunk of the
Corporate
company
sector.
courts.
Right.
No, and of the company court's work. So, yeah, and of the corporate sector. So, I think a lot will depend then on how well it functions, as most of these things do. But I think the direction is clear. The idea is to bring this under one roof, give it one appellate authority, and then onto the Supreme Court. Let's hope it works well.
Right.
I think because that's why the Act itself also provides certain time frame in case of winding up cases and sick industries cases, so that all these assets can be turned around very fast. The whole intent is that economy also gains from this. Otherwise, because of this, as Shiraz rightly said, multiplicity of agencies, BIFR could declare as a unit as sick but cannot order winding up. Then you have to go back to the High Court. Whereas here it is the same body which will take action immediately. So a lot of hope is dependent on that. Coming to the earlier point, as I understand, government gave a promise to the Supreme Court that it will take cognizance of all the observations made by the Supreme Court, and that will be taken care now while implementing. So therefore the Madras High Court, whatever issues were there, those things have to be sorted out, and there will be proper judicial member, etc., which earlier it was not there.
Was not there.
And one of the weak points which was there earlier was that a joint secretary anytime could become a member of the tribunal.
I see.
Within 6 months, if he feels he is not enjoying, he can go back and resume as joint secretary. That was one of the basic issues which was considered anathema to this, because if you become a judge, you are a judge.
Right.
And second was that the tenure was only 3 years. And the Supreme Court remarked, do you think any competent person will come for 3 years? You should have young people who want to make a career, and that is possible when you give certainty of it. So government agreed to do that also.
Right.
So I think after taking cognizance of all these issues, tribunal should be able to discharge its duties the way it is expected to.
Right. Now the task is to find the people to man it and get the processes going.
I would say personally, first task is to have proper physical premises. That is a big task. As we have seen at the Company Law Board today, we are inadequate, hopelessly inadequate. Then the adequate manpower. Because I remember once I had a chance, I had told Arun Jaitley when he was here that these are the issues, and then to have people who will be manning these tribunals, unlike BIFR and others where Sinecure people, retired people, they just come for comfort, that will not do here. Otherwise the whole thing will collapse. So I hope government is conscious of that and take adequate care in that regard.
Right. And considering the seriousness to which a lot of the corporate governance norms have been stepped up, and we have separate episodes on governance where not just companies in the public space, even private companies, the bar has been raised for them to comply with various norms because the role of a corporate in society has been stepped up. I think it's time these tribunals are taken very, very seriously and staffed seriously. May I also ask each of you if there's any other aspect you'd like to cover on the issue of regulatory jurisdiction or regulatory scope, and summarize your thoughts on what is it that you think are the central features in this space in the Companies Act 2013?
I would say if there's a central feature, it's the movement to unify action relating to companies under one statute, and therefore to try and harmonize the action being taken by different agencies without going to the extent of actually disbanding them and having a unified authority.
Right.
Because that's probably not feasible, at least not at this stage. To harmonize them, but to clearly delineate their responsibilities, and to a certain extent I think the Act does that. The other feature is that you are introducing new elements which were until now under separate statutes, providing that they will be regulated under this statute while not taking away jurisdictions under the
Other statutes.
other statutes. So I think those two features are
Stand out as a...
are very important.
Right.
And also at the top of it that you have a tribunal and an appellate agency which is now going to be looking in a far more holistic way at the whole issue of corporate law.
Right.
Because these are all elements that come into play.
Hmm.
The securities trading element, the restructuring element, the corporate sickness element, all of which now presumably will be given a more holistic look because you will now have persons who are dealing with these matters
Right.
on a regular basis.
So a bench that's looking at a sick company
will
is looking
will
at a
tomorrow be
winding up
looking at an
and
insider trading case.
And yeah, that's right. So
And we'll be seeing how it hangs together
right.
in a sense.
Right. So Would you concur?
Yeah, this of course I concur with. But according to me, so far as the whole act itself is concerned, the cornerstone is that greater accountability, increased transparency, and reduced government control. That's why there is a greater role for professionals. A lot of certification has been involved, which means more and more speedy. So I think Companies Act 2013 has tried to meet the hopes and aspirations which were there, that it will be a more modern law. And I recall when I was a member of the Nareshchandra Committee, there this thought was there which you just articulated about greater corporate governance even for unlisted companies, for large private companies.
Yeah.
Because corporate governance should start there. Listing company is the eventual, but it should be right in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that way this Companies Act is making a difference. And that's why that class of small companies, dormant companies, so that those who are not in the public domain that active, they can remain aside. But other companies should be more accountable, and with efficient judicial machinery or quasi-judicial machinery in the form of tribunal, I think it should be possible to achieve those goals. That's how I look at it as such.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
been
Thank
very
you.
useful to summarize all this.
Thank you.
So that's all we have time for this episode. We'd encourage readers to pick up the relevant provisions and read them, because there's only a very high level overview of key issues relating to regulatory jurisdiction. Please do read up the provisions of the Act. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.